Merry Christmas, as we say, and God bless. We've made it another year, and it's been a blessing to be this long. If you have made it, if you have family and friends that have made it, make sure that you know, make sure that they know that you love them and that they are important to you. I'm making this video today because I think it's important to understand the actual person of who we call Santa Claus today. And I think for the most part, we've tried to keep it in good heart, but I think it's also very important to understand who he truly was and who he served. I think that's the most important part that sometimes we might miss in the things that we do on this day. Santa Claus, or as they said in the Holland area, in the 3rd century, all the way back in 270 AD is when this man was born. So a very long time ago, only 240 years after Christ died, as they say. So at this time, they were very, very, very people, men and women of God were very close to those who were the apostles, or very close in time frame to those people. So just imagine the context at this time. So in Rome at the time, who controlled a lot of Europe and a lot of the places around there, outlawed Christianity at the time. And so he grew up in that time frame where even he was persecuted more than we know now. So that should go to encourage any of those who are feeling that way now. But to start, he was born, his mother and father died at a younger age. Then he lived with his uncle. His uncle was the bishop of the area that he lived in and lived around. He grew up, they believe, say, in the Middle Eastern kind of area, but he grew up a long time ago, in a time where it wasn't okay to be Christian, where people were literally dying if they professed their Christian faith. So when he came up, a lot of people respected him, much like Jesus. When he was a child, he would say very deep and thought-provoking things to many other leaders, and they would be like, wow, this kid really is a man of God, or a child of God, as they would say. And so I don't want us to forget that. I pray that, when you go about today and you're on your phones or whatever, and if you see this video, Lord willing, we remember that Santa Claus not just was this figure, but he was actually a man, a true person, and a believer in God and in Christ. Santa Claus, or as we say, Saint Nick, which the name came from the Dutch counterpart of the English name, Sinterklaas. And as we brought it over into America, originally in New York, we became Santa Claus. In his life, he did many different things. Matter of fact, he was a part of the first ecumenical council. So in the early 300s, he was a part of the first ecumenical council. Being a young man, he became bishop because his fervor and his continual fight for Christ and what Christ stood for, he was noticed, and he became the next bishop after his uncle in that area. And so as he was becoming a bishop, he, in the ecumenical council, he was so on fire for God and wouldn't stand for anything else, that he even, just as Jesus did in the temple, when people were gambling and throwing money and dancing and doing all type of things in the temple, and Jesus flipped tables and got pissed off, the same way Saint Nicholas did when in the ecumenical council in the church that they had at the time. He actually he struck a man for spewing heresy and false teachings, because at that time it was so serious, and it should be now, even to us, that he says, no, I will not stand for this. Saint Nicholas was thrown in jail at that time, and he ended up sitting in jail for a couple of days. And in a dream, a vision, a real life thing, Jesus and his mother visited him and gave him his bishop wear, as you would say. So, bishops in the church, much like the Orthodox and the Catholic Church today, they have stalls and shawls over the shoulder. So he came and he received those things from Jesus and his mother. So when he got these things, and the next day, the new Emperor Constantine, who was the emperor for a little bit, he he was like, wow, we must release this guy because Christ and God favors him. For he went into jail with nothing, with very few clothes on, and he went into jail in handcuffs, and now the next day he's in bishop. He's dressed as a bishop. God must have favor on him, so he released him and says, you know what, we're gonna make you bishop again over the place that you have, because we know there's something special about you. And so it was very interesting to see that even then, it's not just this random figure, but God had his hand on his life and he trusted the Lord. And so when he went in to different places, he saw people that didn't have anything or didn't less, and he would throw them sacks of gold. And so that's many of where these tales that we get today of, oh, we give gifts and all that things. But see, the difference was, it says, God said, he says, give clothes to the people who don't have shelter. Give food to the people that are hungry. And so that's what, give to the poor and give to the needy. And so that's what St. Nicholas did. He actually was with the intent of God, literally saying, you know what, I'm going to do what he told me to do and not just do what everyone else is doing. So he would throw gold to people in secret. Us today, we'd be like, well, I give you some gold, man, give me some recognition later. But he did it in secret, hoping that no one would find out. But he knew that God saw him. That's not why he did it, but he knew that in the end of the day that he was doing it right by God. So I encourage you today, if you are doing something, don't do it out in front of everybody. Don't do it for the glory, for you shall surely have your reward, but do it for God, and your reward shall be greater in heaven. So please know and remember that God sees you and he will reward you. It's not like it is going to go unnoticed. And so I also, the last story that he had in his life that was really big, St. Nicholas was a guy who, there was 3 prostitutes in a town. There was three daughters of this man that were very wealthy. And, at that time you had to pay to marry someone, to marry, and the dad lost all his riches, so he had no other money. So then the father was afraid that his 3 unwedded daughters were going to be cast off in a prostitution, or as that time they said slavery, because it was prostituted slavery. And so same as we pretty much see today, but sometimes even worse. And so what happened was St. Nick caught wind of this story, and he said, you know what, I'm gonna make this right. He kind of flew by their house, and I guess one day threw sacks of gold through the window, and it was caught in a shoe or a stocking. And so henceforth, some of this, the hoopla we have today. But the point of it was, he was giving to those who were in need and giving to those who had less, not to be seen. He actually begged the father. Once the father found out who it was, he said, no, please don't tell anybody that it was me. I don't want any credit. Give it all to God. And so as this man was a bishop, he literally stood in the gap for those who didn't have a voice. So if you're doing that today, I praise you and the work that you're doing, because God is working through you. But I also encourage those who are not, and just giving for themselves, or giving for greed, or giving to people who